Hi everyone, Heather Steves here, and today I'm going to share with you a fun little ATC card holder that I made. I started with the Grungy wood papers, and I grabbed my journal File XL1 folder, and unfortunately I forgot to hit the record button when I started, so I did cut that out. I folded it equally into 3, and then I inked all of the edges. So next I grabbed the pocket from the Summer Journal Specials, the older one, and I cut out a couple of those little pockets. I just grabbed my scoreboard because I wanted it to be just slightly smaller than what it is. So I rescored just a probably 1/16 of an inch in from where the score is, folded those edges, and then it fits much better and it will fold over. Then you just take your scissors and you just cut those little corners again so that it folds nicely and tucks under. So again, I inked the edges of that. I'm using the Tim Holtz Peacock Feathers. I only have Distress Oxide inks, so it takes a little bit longer for it to dry, but it still works great. And the color is just perfect for this little set that I'm making. So I use my double-sided adhesive, I put it on all the tabs, and then I'm attaching it. You can see I attach the bottom piece first, and then I'm attaching the sides. I'm able to kind of push them in so that they're going to be tucked in nicely, and then the pocket is a little bit stuck out. I'm not too sure how to say that. I forgot to ink that top edge, so I had to ink it while it was stuck. And then you can see that my little cards, they're quite dimensional, so they fit in there quite nicely. And now I'm just going to flip over and work on the opposite side. So now I'm just repeating what I did on the other side. I'm taking the pocket, I'm scoring it just so that it's a tiny bit smaller, and I'm trimming off those corners so that they'll all fold under nicely. I inked all of the edges, and this time I didn't miss the top edge, and doing it for the second pocket. So you just got to remember when you're cutting these and you want your papers to be the same, that you cut each one of these pockets out on opposite sides of your paper. That way you have the matching paper and you don't have to fold it along the back side. If that makes sense. If you've die cut, you know that once you run it through your machine, it has a different finish on one side and the other, so the front and the back is kind of distinguishable. So anyway, I just went ahead and I used my double-sided adhesive again. I attached the bottom first, and then I attached the sides, and I'm able to put a little bit of pressure on them so that they bulge out a little bit, and then my cards fit in there very nicely. So my next step was to grab out my seam binding. I wanted to make sure I had something to secure this folder closed because it's quite bulky. So I put some of my ink onto my craft mat, sprayed it with some water, and got it nice and wet, and covered all that ribbon nicely so that it will match very well. I just set it on a paper towel to let it dry. Once it was dry, it ended up with a little bit of a variation of color, but I quite like that, and then I was able to move on to decorating the rest of the folder. So I grabbed a few different stamp sets, but I started with the Journal Phrases 2, CS305, and I got it all inked up, and I stamped it onto some very light gray cardstock. I just used because it's Distress Oxide, I use my my Stays-On cleaner to get all of the ink off of that. I did try and use my stamp platform, but I couldn't get a good image on that. So it actually worked out really nicely just using my block and stamping it. Then I also grabbed out the DS04 Far Far Away stamp, and I just stamped a bunch of these images. So I'm just using like a dark gray color, and I'm stamping it onto that very, very light gray cardstock. So I'm just stamping a bunch of different ones. I don't really know exactly what I'm going to do with them, but I thought that they would go very nicely, and I thought I could maybe use them like in a collage kind of way to decorate that folder. So I just continued to stamp the different images, and then I'm going to run them through the die cut machine and have them all cut out. So my next step was to add the ribbon to the folder, but because of the tabs on the ends, I didn't want the ribbon to pull and to bend those. So I just cut this tiny slit in the paper there, and I had this little metal ruler thing that I just used to shove it through there, and then that allows me to tie up the folder without damaging that edge. So next up I can start to embellish. So I grabbed these tiny teeny tiny Dauber sticks, and because this little window has such tiny little openings, these sticks are perfect for inking inside of those little edges. I always work from the back with them because you often slip and then you would just draw a line across the front of your image. So it's always better to work from the back. And then I grabbed the stamped words and I just decided to cut a few of those out. Again, I'm inking the edges and I'm just creating myself a little collage of items for the front. So once I had my images placed down on the front, I thought, oh, I really need something else. So I grabbed out the white cardstock and this tiny little butterfly die, and I cut myself a few of them, and then I ended up embellishing them the same way that I did the ones that are on my ATC cards. I used my Stickles glitter gel, the moon dust kind, and I just grabbed an old paintbrush and I just started dabbing it on all of the butterflies, and it just leaves a really nice glitter effect on each butterfly. So I set those aside to dry, and while I was waiting, I decided to start attaching all of my other stamps and embellishments. So I just used some of my liquid adhesive since there's a lot of small spaces on these sets, and I attached those pieces down. And then I wanted to make sure that I had noted that it was the January prompt for these cards. So I just grabbed my stamp set CS293, the journal dates and months, and I grabbed one of the frames from that, and then the January stamp, and I stamped that in there, cut it out, and then I just inked the edges so that I could put that on top of the pocket. So I felt that it needed a little bit something to go with it, so I just cut another little word from the journal phrases stamp and I attached that with it, and then I grabbed another frame from the journal dates and months stamp. This time it was the longer one. I stamped that in the peacock color, and then I stamped a different word inside of it. I just used a dark gray color for that, and then I fussy cut that one out as well, so that I could attach it to the other pocket. So I felt that the word by itself didn't look great, so I had this little flourish that I'd stamped, but when I die cut it, it kind of slipped, so it wasn't a perfect stamp, but I only needed a part of it to put on this little pocket. So by doing that, it actually worked out really well, and the piece that didn't die cut properly, I just cut that off, and then you can't see that there's any issues with it. So now I'm just going to flip that over and start working on the other side. Because my ribbon is sitting on the back here, I am going to need to attach that. So after I get all of these images inked, I realized that. So I grabbed some of my double-sided adhesive, I just put that underneath the ribbon, and then I'm attaching my two little stamped images here. And I'm really happy with how that worked because the oval frame actually covered up the edge of the ribbon, so you don't even see that it's tucked in through that little slit in the paper. So I'm just adding another phrase from the stamped image to the front to finish that off, and then I'm moving on to the pockets. So again, I'm going to start with one of the phrases from the stamped image, but because of the way that they're going to sit on the pockets and the front, I didn't think it was going to work very well to do that in the middle, because then it would look just like a straight row of words. So instead I grabbed the journal dates and months stamp and this little saying off of it, and I took the cards out of the pockets, and then I've put it on my foam mat, and I've put some extra foam on it, which will then make sure that I get a nice crisp image on that pocket. So although this stamp is saying just in a straight line, I wanted to break up the words. So I just inked the first word and I stamped it as you saw me doing there. And now I've taken that first word, I've cleaned off the stamp, and I'm putting a piece of Scotch tape over top of that first word. And then I pull the stamp, I ink it, and then I pull the tape off of it and stamp that middle section, and then next I can actually stamp just the ending of it. One thing to remember is after you clean it, you need to make sure that your stamp is dry, because I've made that mistake before and then I make a bit of a mess of my paper because the stamp is wet and it leaves a little bit of a mark from the water on your paper. So I wanted to add something else. I didn't have a stamped image that I really liked, so I grabbed this arrow from the Journal XL1 set, and I cut out on the kind of that blue color cardstock, and I just attached that below, and I think that finished that page off nicely. So now that my butterflies are dry, I can start to attach them. So I wanted to add one to this pocket, and I just used a little bit of the liquid glue on the center of the butterfly and on the antennas, and I stuck them down in 3 different places. And then as I'm tying my ribbon, I realized I didn't trim the ends of the ribbon off, so I did that quickly, and then my little folder is complete. I really hope you enjoyed watching this video. Please don't forget to like and subscribe to my channel, and of course, have yourself a wonderful day.